Hey, so I hear these tasty little synth melodies in TV shows and movies all the time, and I think it's a really great sound. It's just solo synth. This is a beginner-friendly thing to do. It's perfect for anybody who isn't necessarily a keyboard player by trade, and it's pretty fun because there's just a trick to it that you might not guess. Normally, when you write a melody, you probably use a combination of your ear, imagining you're hearing something, and your intuition for the instrument that you're playing. But the problem with that is, especially for non-keyboard players, that intuition may not be very well developed. And even for people who do have it pretty well developed, you can still miss, you can still make mistakes. What this method is missing is the respect for the underlying structure of the piece of music that you're writing. Because whatever you write, no matter what it is, there are always going to be chords that go along with it. Even if you're not intending for it to have a chord progression, there will be a chord progression that goes along with it, even if it's very simple. By recognizing and paying attention to that underlying chord progression, you can get a lot further with your ideas, pushing them and getting more out of that stream of consciousness. You can just extend it actually a lot further if you just use that knowledge that you know what chords you're implying with your melody. So I'm going to be using the Matriarch today. Let's check it out. We're going to start with a little bit of sound design to set ourselves up for success. I want a simple mono patch that's forgiving to space between the notes. I'm going to turn the cutoff all the way down and turn up the envelope amount. I have a little bit of decay on the filter envelope and a nice amount of release, about half. I'm going to add some release to the amp envelope too. And I'm going to go ahead and switch oscillator 1 to a triangle wave. I'm going to add a little bit of delay because a little bit of ambience really goes a long way. Let's look at the simplest chord change, the 5-1 in the key of C. You can think of this as having a tension and release cycle of just tension, release, tension, release. We can find the 5-1 progression by counting up from C, which is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 5, which is G, and 1 is C. We'll be using 7th chords, so each one has 4 notes. And we're going to take every other note. So we're going to take a note from the 1 chord, take it, skip it, take it, skip it, take it, skip it. And then we'll do the same thing starting from the 5 chord here. Any octaves of these notes are also okay. So that opens up the whole keyboard for us. So the progression goes like this. 5, 1. 5, 1. Or if you prefer, that's an octave of the 5th. I'm not going to necessarily play these notes. I'm just going to play notes from the chords, and in that way imply the chord progression in the melody. These notes, by the way, are called chord tones. See how nice of an arc that melody has? It's never awkward because it comes from something so simple. Just because there are no chords doesn't mean our melody shouldn't contain the function of chords, which is to move things along and to progress. The rule here is you can't break your chord change, because everything you play does imply a chord change. If you break it by playing a bunch of 1 chord notes over the 5 chord, you're probably going to mess up your tension and release cycle and end up with something that doesn't sound great. Unless you stumble on a chord change that happens to sound good. So that's not to say you shouldn't play notes that aren't in the arpeggios of your chords, chord tones. You can. They just need to be chosen in a way that doesn't break up the flow of your progression. Here's an example. So what does it mean to choose in a way that doesn't break up the flow? You need experience doing this to have any kind of foresight here. There's no way around it. It just takes time to develop intuition. But one easy way of mostly choosing well is to connect the dots between two chord tones. Of course, it needs to come from your ear. If you do this mechanically, it may not be very successful, especially at a slow speed like this. Staying in key will make it easier too. But I want to encourage you to stay away from the more logical, calculated route and really lean on your ear. So maybe in our G7, maybe I'll connect these first three. It's also worth mentioning, playing the arpeggios straight through rarely works. You need to be creative with it, and that requires getting to know it really well. As silly as it sounds, playing the arpeggios straight through up and down actually really helps as practice, even though you probably don't want to do that when you're performing. Overall, the key here is to figure out what kind of chord changes your melodies tend to imply. There will be 5/1s, there will be 1/4s, and there will be other things too. You can and should analyze your own taste a little bit. You can look back at a few melodies you've written in the past and see if they remind you of any arpeggios you've seen. Or try playing a bass line under the melody and find the simplest fit. Most of the chord changes should be relatively simple, but of course the world of music is full of exceptions. That's part of why it's so much fun to explore though. So give this a try for yourself and see if you like where it leads your ear. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this video and you want more like it. Thanks.